Her name was Minako. With long hair and wearing a JK uniform, she wandered the streets of Tokyo. My name is Wang Chong, a young man on a business trip in a foreign country, reeling from a recent breakup. The moment we met under the dim lights, both our destinies changed. I had just had a showdown with my girlfriend, Xiao Man, and decisively broke up with her. Right after, I was assigned by my company to go on a business trip to Japan for a month. Actually, the company had assigned me trips several times before, but I was deeply in love with Xiao Man at the time, so I refused them all. But this time, my team leader told me that if I refused again, I might be optimized by the company and I should figure out myself. Xiao Man complained that I lacked ambition and didn't make enough money, all while getting uncomfortably close with a colleague of hers surnamed Chun. If I didn't break up with her after that, what was I waiting for? Damn it, when I wanted to work hard, she blamed me for spending too little time with her and wouldn't let me go on several business trips. I gave up opportunities for promotion, and now she was complaining that I earned too little and wasn't trying hard enough. In short, the love was gone. She had fallen for someone else, and in her eyes, I was the one with the problem. This time, I agreed to the team leader's request without a second thought. I didn't care if there was a promotion opportunity, I just thought of it as a trip to clear my head. A week later, I packed my bags, composed myself, and flew to Japan. If I had any lingering feelings before boarding, they all vanished the moment the plane took off. On the plane, instead of admiring the beautiful scenery outside the window, I slept. I hadn't slept well since the day I came back from Xiao Man's place. After 2 hours of sleep, the plane landed on time at Narita International Airport. It was already dark. My first impression upon leaving the airport was that it was different from what I had imagined. The airport was too small, but there were quite a few people. After all, it was the capital's airport, so the passenger traffic was there. As I exited, I saw a colleague from my company holding a sign, already waiting for me. He was a man in his 30s named Lin Hui, and he had been here for 8 years. The company had arranged temporary accommodation for me, a private residence very close to the office. On the way to my place, Lin Hui told me many strange and interesting anecdotes about Japan, like the adult entertainment shops and the Japanese video industry that men secretly watch. He spoke with great enthusiasm, and I listened intently, mainly out of curiosity. For this reason, Lin Hui even made a detour to drive me past the famous Kabukicho Ikibangai in Shinjuku. According to Lin Hui, this place was on par with Ginza, the most prosperous area in all of Tokyo. Even just passing by, what I saw left me dumbfounded. For certain reasons, I won't elaborate further. If you have the chance to go to Japan, you can see for yourself. Later, Lin Hui took me to see the Tokyo Tower, which was really just a radio tower. There are plenty of such buildings back in my country, and this one was not far from where I was staying. Lin Hui also took me to a nearby place for sukiyaki. The dish was mostly vegetarian and the taste was on the sweet side. I didn't like it much. However, I asked Lin Hui a question that had been on my mind for a long time. What's the deal with Kamamachi Shaojo? Lin Hui told me that Kamamachi Shaojo, God-waiting girls, were a unique feature of Japan. They are homeless girls who stand on the street, waiting for a man who can provide them with food and shelter. In their eyes, such a man is a kami god. They are girls waiting for a god's help, which is why they are called Kamamachi Shaojo. I asked with a smile, so if you take them in, can you ask them to do anything? Lin Hui also smiled and said he knew what I meant, but that it was illegal. The help provided by the god is gratuitous. The god cannot force them to do anything. Of course, if they are willing, they might help clean the house or cook for you as a way of repaying the favor. Even those other things you're thinking about aren't impossible, but it has to be completely voluntary on their part. As long as the god doesn't kick them out, they will continue to stay. I couldn't help but ask, aren't they afraid of running into bad people? Of course they are, Lin Hui said, but what choice do they have? Kamamachi Shaojo are penniless. They have no other options. Often, after being mistreated by one god, they end up back on the streets, waiting for the next god to appear. And the number of Kamamachi Shaojo who go missing in Japan each year is countless. I sighed, then fell into deep thought, my mind racing. Seeing this, Lin Hui immediately warned me not to get any funny ideas. Most of these Kamamachi Shaojo are troubled girls who have run away from home, and many of them are minors. Even if you don't have any strange intentions, just taking them in is against the law. If you ever encounter one, it's best to stay far away. Don't stir up trouble in a foreign country. I nodded and said that I had only ever seen the mention online and was purely curious. But Lin Hui just smiled and said, "You'd better be just purely curious." After dinner, Lin Hui took me to buy some daily necessities, cooking oil, salt, soy sauce, vinegar, as well as some frozen food and snacks. Then he drove me to the place I was staying, a single-story, one-bedroom wooden machia. From the outside, the machia looked old and small, but it had a bathroom and a kitchen, though they were both quite cramped. The inside, however, was swept clean, with hardwood floors throughout. But it felt low and oppressive, a typical example of the delicate Sakura-style architecture. After helping me carry my luggage inside, Lin Hui helped me exchange some Sakura currency and then prepare to leave. Before he left, he reminded me to report to the company early tomorrow and told me where it was located. Actually, it wasn't far from the company. It was just a 10-minute or so walk. After Lin Hui left, I tidied up the house a bit and made the bed. Calling it a bed was a stretch. It was really just a floor mattress, slightly raised, the so-called tatami. But I didn't feel sleepy. After all, being alone in a foreign country, I was somewhat emotional. Since I couldn't sleep, I decided to go out for a walk. I figured I'd be living here for about a month, so it would be good to get familiar with the surroundings. But the nights in the Sakura country were different from back home, and this area was quite remote. The roads were narrow, there were few people on the streets, and there were cigarette butts and trash on the ground. It wasn't like what people said online about how clean and hygienic the Sakura country was. There weren't many streetlights, and some were constantly flickering, clearly not having been maintained for a long time. Only a few convenience stores were open, to say nothing of restaurants. After walking around for a bit, I felt it was completely different from what I had imagined. A little disappointed, I headed back the way I came. On my way back, I saw a girl with a suitcase standing under a streetlight not far from my place. She was wearing a neat, short-sleeved sailor uniform top with a bright red tie at the collar, the color sharp and vivid. On her lower body, she wore a knee-length pleated skirt that swayed gently in the breeze. She was tall and very thin, with long hair down to her shoulders. Her face looked exceptionally sallow under the lamplight. Wearing only a JK uniform on this late autumn night, wasn't she cold? Her features were delicate, as if she had stepped right out of an anime. She was clearly wearing makeup. Her eyelashes were long, and her eyes were large but lifeless. Her expression was very reserved. When she saw me looking at her, she gave me a polite nod. My first thought was that she must be a Kamamachi shoujo. I couldn't believe I'd run into one on my first day in the Sakura country. But Lin Hui's warning was still ringing in my ears, so I didn't dare to get involved. I just quickened my pace, thinking I should get home quickly and avoid trouble. Unexpectedly, the girl actually started following me, dragging her suitcase behind her. My steps grew faster and faster, and I quickly opened my door. The moment I stepped inside, I glanced back outside. I saw that she didn't follow me in, but just stood under the window to the side of my door. I was quite frightened, as this was the first time I had ever encountered such a situation. And Lin Hui hadn't told me that they would actively follow people. I locked the door and decided to ignore it, thinking there was no way she could break in and that she would surely leave after a while. But after I finished washing up, I went to the front window and took a look. She was still there, and she was no longer standing but sitting on her suitcase with her head down. It was already late autumn, and the weather outside was quite cold. Although I had no intention of taking her in, I felt a pang of pity. I went to my snack bag, found a few packs of instant ramen and a bottle of mineral water, and opened the door. She must have heard the door open, as she turned her head to look at me. I tentatively held up the things in my hand and walked slowly towards her. Before coming, I had downloaded a real-time translation app. I took out my phone and asked her if she was hungry, then pointed to the items in my hand. Although she couldn't understand Chinese, she nodded slightly after listening to the translation. Only then did I hand the things to her. She stood up, bowed, and said in the Sakura language, "Arigato gozaimasu." Her voice was very pleasant, and her tone was gentle. I didn't need a translation for that one. I understood it, having seen plenty of short Sakura videos. I nodded slightly, mumbling under my breath, "Uh-huh. Annie dies after Annie dies, uncle dies." I gave her the things and turned to go back inside. As I was closing the door, I saw she had already torn open the instant ramen and started eating. Although you could tell she was very hungry, her manners were still quite refined. At that moment, I thought that these girls were quite pitiful, but that was all, just pity. Lin Hui had been in the Sakura country for 8 years. He was an old-timer, and I had to listen to his advice. As I was getting ready for bed, a sudden flash of lightning was followed by a loud clap of thunder. It was about to rain. With every autumn rain, it gets colder. My first instinct was to walk to the front window and look outside. If it started to rain, what would this little Sakura girl do? But I saw she was still under the window, leaning against the wall, curled up there. It felt just like a homeless stray dog. I opened the window and said to her, "It's about to rain." She didn't understand what I was saying and just looked up at me blankly. Seeing her pitiful gaze, my compassion got the better of me, and in the end, I opened the door. Just as the door opened, another bolt of lightning flashed across the night sky, followed by a rumble of thunder. She was in the corner, trembling all over. I used a real-time translator to tell her to leave quickly, that it was about to rain. She replied with a few sentences in Japanese, and through the software's translation, I learned she had nowhere to go. But she didn't ask to come into my house to take shelter from the rain. I had a vague feeling, are all the God-waiting girls from Japan like this? They don't ask directly, but just make your heart overflow with pity, so you invite them in on your own initiative? But Lin Hui's warning was still in my mind, so I didn't dare let her in. I just kept advising her to leave, suggesting she could find an internet cafe or a small inn to make do for the night. She said she had no money and couldn't afford those places. Just as I was listening to the translation, the rain started to fall, and it wasn't a light shower either. I instinctively stepped back inside and glanced sideways from the doorway. She was still squatting on the ground. She held her hands over her head as if she could block the rain with them. I looked up at the sky again and figured the rain wouldn't be stopping anytime soon. In the end, I used my phone to tell her she could take shelter in my doorway and leave after the rain stopped. She stood up, bowed in thanks, and then pulled her suitcase over to the doorway. To be honest, seeing that she didn't refuse at all, I immediately regretted it. This doesn't count as taking her in, right? Did she misunderstand me? And even if she didn't misunderstand, what if the rain doesn't stop all night? But seeing her pitiful appearance, I couldn't bear it. And she did indeed keep her promise. She said she'd stay in the doorway, and she stayed right in the doorway. She sat on the wooden floor, continuing to curl up in the doorway, looking miserable. Seeing that she was soaked, I immediately went to the bathroom, found a dry bath towel, and handed it to her to dry herself off. She didn't stand on ceremony with me, taking the towel and starting to wipe herself down. The rain on her head, face, and neck was dried, but her clothes were still wet. And once her white sailor uniform got wet, it clung tightly to her body. You could even faintly make out what she was wearing underneath. For a moment, I felt a rush of heat, my mind filling with all sorts of scenarios. Just then, she let out a series of sneezes, her body still shivering. I thought, since I've already let her in the doorway, I might as well go all the way with this good deed. Using the real-time translator, I asked if she had a change of clothes in her suitcase and told her to take a hot shower and change. However, she looked at me with some hesitation and wariness. Her gaze made me feel a bit embarrassed. I quickly explained that I didn't mean anything by it. I was just afraid she would catch a cold and get sick. She stared at me for a long time before finally standing up, bowing in thanks, and then opening her suitcase. Only then did I notice that her suitcase was stuffed completely full of clothes and nothing else. And all the clothes looked especially childish, with lots of cartoon designs. Lin Hui's warning instantly came to my mind. In Japan, sheltering a minor is against the law. I immediately asked her, "If you don't mind me asking, what's your name? How old are you? Do you have an ID card?" She was stunned for a moment, then took out a card and handed it to me. I looked at it. It wasn't an ID card, but a driver's license. I later learned from Lin Hui that Japan doesn't have ID cards. They use documents like driver's licenses, residence cards, and health insurance cards for identification. I glanced at the driver's license. The name field read Minako Mitsui. After that was written Heisei 14, June 10th, and below there was an address and other things. The photo in the bottom right corner looked a bit like her, but she was wearing makeup now, so it was hard to be sure. The most crucial thing was that Japan doesn't use the Gregorian calendar for years, but some kind of era name. How the hell was I supposed to know what year Heisei 15 was? I quickly asked Minako, and she said it was 2004. Only then did I breathe a sigh of relief. That would make her 20, definitely an adult. I then returned the driver's license to her and told her to go take a shower. After Minako grabbed her change of clothes, she asked me where the bathroom was. Every time she spoke, she would bow, being exceptionally polite and humble. Soon, the sound of running water came from the bathroom. Meanwhile, I took out my phone, wanting to search for any small inns or the like nearby. But I wasn't very good at using Japanese apps, and I couldn't read Japanese either, so I could only guess. After fumbling with it for a long time without finding anything, I just gave up. In a short while, Minako had finished her shower and came out. The moment the bathroom door opened, the fresh scent of shower gel wafted out. She had changed out of her JK uniform and into a maid outfit. It was a well-tailored black dress, the hemline swaying gently with her steps. The bow tie at her neck was tied just right, and delicate lace traced intricate patterns on the white apron. For a fleeting moment, the sight of her evoked a sense of pity. I couldn't help but stare, thinking to myself, are all women from the Sakura country this an anime culture? Doesn't she have any normal clothes? My personal guess was that they probably use these kinds of outfits to attract men who might take them in. Minako bowed to me again in thanks, then put her changed wet clothes into a plastic bag and placed it in her suitcase. I glanced outside. Not only had the rain not stopped, but it was coming down even harder. I felt a wave of indecision. Should I let her go or not? Damn it. I have to get up early tomorrow to report to the branch office. I can't keep this up with her. But Minako still didn't proactively make any requests. After packing, she continued to sit by the door. I was already getting sleepy. After all, I had been on a plane for several hours and then dragged around half of Tokyo by Linhui. I was genuinely tired, but I felt too awkward to just kick Minako out. I was completely torn. I even cursed myself for looking for trouble and bringing this inconvenience upon myself. After a period of internal struggle, I used a translator to say to Minako, "Looks like this rain won't stop anytime soon. Why don't you just sleep on the floor for one night? But you have to leave tomorrow." Upon hearing this, Minako immediately stood up, bowed, and repeatedly said arigato. I hurried over and rummaged through the closet, but there was no second set of bedding. So I took out my own overcoat and gave it to her to use as a blanket. I felt I'd done all I could. I couldn't possibly give her my bed, right? In my head, I fantasized if we slept together, that could be considered. But then I remembered Lin Huey's warning and dared not let my thoughts wander. I just wanted it to be morning so she would leave. Minako didn't seem to mind. In any case, it was far better than being drenched in rain all night. She opened her suitcase, and at the very bottom, there was actually a blanket. She took it out, spread it on the wooden floor, then covered herself with my overcoat, lay down, and said to me, "Oyasumine-sai." I didn't understand what it meant, but I guessed it was probably good night, so I grunted in acknowledgement and closed my eyes to sleep. Strangely enough, though I had been very tired, now that I was in bed, I was wide awake. I tossed and turned, unable to fall asleep. I didn't know if it was because I wasn't used to the bed or something else. At that moment, I subconsciously glanced at Minako beside the bed and saw that she was fiddling with her phone, not asleep either. As if sensing my gaze, she immediately turned her head to look at me and quickly said something. I took out my phone to use the translator. Only after she repeated it did I understand that she was asking why I wasn't asleep yet. I said I probably wasn't used to the bed and couldn't sleep, then asked her what she was doing if she wasn't sleeping. Minako said she was telling her friend that she had a place to sleep tonight, so her friend wouldn't worry. Hearing this, I was suddenly alarmed, thinking Minako isn't going to ask her friend to come over too, is she? I was kind enough to take you in for one night, but I never planned on taking in just anyone. This isn't a shelter. Although I didn't say anything, Minako seemed to have read my mind. She told me that her friend had also found a place to sleep, and that place had promised she could stay there temporarily. Hearing this, I thought to myself, are you trying to hint at something? I didn't respond, changing the subject by asking her why she was homeless. Minako said her parents were divorced, and she lived with her father. But a year ago, her father became addicted to game machines and was hiding from debt collectors everywhere. She had no choice but to run away as well. I was confused. Playing game machines, What kind of debt would you need to hide from? It was only after Minako's explanation that I understood. The game machines she was talking about were things like slot machines, no different from gambling. I asked again, "You're already 20, an adult. Have you never thought about finding a job?" Minako shook her head, saying she had dropped out before graduating from middle school. With no education, she couldn't find a job. I sighed, not asking any more questions. After all, I didn't plan on getting to know her deeply. Why bother with so many details? When sleepiness finally came, I said goodnight again and closed my eyes to sleep. The next day, before my alarm went off, I was woken up by some noise in the room. My heart suddenly jumped. Damn it, Minako isn't robbing me, is she? The room was small. As soon as I sat up, I could see Minako, dressed in her maid outfit, frying eggs in the kitchen. After the eggs were fried, I wrapped them with the cheese slices I had bought and placed them on a plate. As soon as I turned around, seeing me sitting on the bed, Minako immediately bowed and said something. I opened a translation app to find out she was telling me that she had already made breakfast for me and to remember to eat it after I got up. Seeing there was only one portion, I couldn't help but ask her, "What about you? What are you eating this morning?" Minako said that without my permission, she wouldn't dare to eat my food on her own. Seeing this, I quickly told her to make a portion for herself as well. Only after I gave her permission did she go to the kitchen to make another one. I want to wash up first. By the time I came out, she had already finished and was kneeling there, waiting to eat with me. Seeing me come out, Minako immediately moved towards me, bowed, and said, "Please have her breakfast." I was really not used to this constantly humble demeanor of Sakura women. If Xiaoman had even half of this gentleness, I would have fought to the death to win her back and cherish her. However, thinking that Minako would be leaving soon anyway, there was no need for me to get hung up on these details, so I sat down and started eating. Minako didn't dare to pick up her cheese until she saw me start eating. And she didn't face me directly, but turned her body slightly to the side before lowering her head to eat. This stuff wasn't filling, and I finished quickly. I then asked Minako if she had thought a place to go. Minako hadn't finished eating yet. She quickly swallowed a mouthful before lowering her head and telling me she hadn't decided yet. I looked at the time and said, "I have to go to work soon, so I can't let you stay." Minako said repeatedly, "I'm already very grateful. I'll leave as soon as I finish eating." I nodded and got up to pack my briefcase for work. After Minako finished eating, she immediately got up to clear the plates. Seeing this, I quickly said, "Don't worry about it. I'll clean up myself after I get off work." But Minako acted as if she hadn't heard me and insisted on helping me wash them and put them back in the cabinet. Only then did she walk to the door, bow to me in thanks once again. I was in a hurry to get to work, so I nodded and left immediately. After Minako came out, she bowed to me again with her suitcase in tow before turning to leave. Only then did I finally breathe a sigh of relief and headed to the company to report for duty. The company wasn't far from here, only a 10 or 20-minute walk. That was only because I wasn't familiar with the route. Otherwise, 10 minutes would have been enough. When I arrived at the company, Lin Hui saw me and immediately took me to HR to handle the onboarding procedures. The entire morning was spent on handover matters, and the rest of the time was spent getting familiar with the business here. Occasionally, Lin Hui would come over and tell me to ask him if there was anything I didn't understand. I didn't really have any questions about the business, but I really wanted to tell him about what happened last night. But I was afraid that if he heard, he would blame me for not listening to him. Since it was a close call that was already over, there was no need to bring it up. Half the day passed quickly. After work, I originally wanted to treat Lin Hui to a meal, but he said he was going to his mother-in-law's for lunch, an appointment made in advance. Only then did I find out that this guy had married a Sakura woman. He suggested I could find a ramen shop nearby to make do, but I still chose to go back and cook frozen dumplings myself. After all, when you're away from home, you save where you can. I wasn't here on vacation. I had been busy all morning. It was only on the way back that I thought of Minako, wondering if she had found a new place to go. But as I walked not far from my residence, I saw that familiar figure at the corner, still standing there. I instinctively stopped in my tracks. Damn, she couldn't have set her sights on me, could she? When Minako saw me coming back, she politely bowed her head to me again, but remained standing there. I hesitated for a moment, but still walked over ignoring her, and went straight back into the house. One can be kind, and one can do good deeds, but one cannot always be kind and do good deeds. After entering the house, I went to the fridge to get the frozen dumplings, preparing to cook them. Just as I put water on the electric stove, the phone rang. It was a call from my friend, Li Fei, back home. He didn't know that Xiao Man and I had broken up, and said he saw her on the street acting intimately with a man. I gave a bitter smile and said that Xiao Man and I had already broken up. Only then did Li Fei realize and said no wonder. Then he chuckled and asked if I had met a God-waiting girl. It was only then that I remembered I wouldn't have known about God-waiting girls if this guy hadn't told me about them before. And hearing him say this, I subconsciously glanced out the window. Minako was actually still standing there. I cleared my throat and told Li Fei I was busy and would call him back when I had time. Li Fei was still going on, saying that if I didn't bring glory to the country, I wouldn't have the face to come back and see the folks back home. I couldn't be bothered with him and hung up the phone directly. I walked to the window and glanced at Minako. I wondered, had she been standing there since this morning? Then she definitely hadn't eaten lunch, right? Looking at Minako's pitiful appearance, and with Li Fei's words in my mind, an evil thought actually crossed my mind. But I also quickly sobered up. Fantasizing was one thing, but reality was another. This wasn't like being back home. If something happened, there would be nowhere to even plead my case. However, thinking about how well-behaved Minako was last night and how she made breakfast for me this morning, an idea suddenly struck me. I pushed open the window. Hearing the sound, Minako immediately turned her head, looking at me with a mixture of surprise and expectation. I took out my phone, opened a translation app, and said to her, "I can take you in." As soon as Minako heard this, she was about to bow. I quickly said, "Don't be in such a hurry. I haven't finished speaking." Minako still bowed and said, "Please go on." I said, "I'm only here in Japan on a business trip for about a month. So I can only take you in for a month at most. And this isn't an act of charity. During this time, you have to help me cook, do laundry, and do housework. If you can't do it, or if I notice anything unusual, I can ask you to leave at any time. Is that okay?" After listening to the translation, Minako immediately smiled, bowed, and said, "Yes, as long as you provide me with food and lodging, I can do it." Seeing her agree so quickly, I hesitated for a moment, but I still went over and opened the door. "Help me cook the dumplings first." Minako immediately dragged her suitcase into the house, put it down, and started to get busy in the kitchen. Watching her, I couldn't help but secretly praise myself for my clever plan. This way, I had found a live-in helper for free, with food and lodging included. At this moment, I had long forgotten what Lin Hui had said. Unexpectedly, Minako looked at the pot of water I was boiling and seemed at a loss. Seeing this, I couldn't help but ask in surprise, "You don't know how to boil dumplings?" Minako said, "Here, our dumplings are all pan-fried, not boiled in water." I frowned. Who eats pan-fried dumplings for lunch? I then told her how to boil them. Minako followed my instructions, putting the dumplings into the boiling water. After the water came to a boil again, she added some cold water. After repeating this process 3 times, all the dumplings floated to the surface, fully cooked. After Minako had served all the dumplings, I went to pour some vinegar. Unfortunately, there was no domestic chili sauce. But luckily, I had bought leigami yesterday, which was just as good. But after taking one bite, I frowned. These Japanese dumplings were completely different from the ones back home. It wasn't just a matter of taste. The Japanese dumpling skins were thin, with little filling, and they lacked chewiness. They were really not good. Maybe I should have listened to Minako and pan-fried them. They might have tasted better. I saw that Minako hadn't picked up her chopsticks and was staring at me. I quickly motioned for her to eat. Only then did Minako hesitantly pick up her chopsticks and start eating. But as soon as she took a small bite, her eyes widened. Moishi. Although I didn't understand, I could tell from her expression that she must be saying it was delicious. I then recommended that she try dipping them in the sauce made of vinegar and leigami. Minako hesitated for a moment, but did as I said. After eating, she kept saying oishi. I couldn't help but feel a little sorry for Minako. She actually thought these terrible dumplings were delicious. She must have never had authentic dumplings before. If she ever tasted our dumplings, she would probably be saying oishi nonstop. What was a delicacy to Minako was a form of torture for me. I just ate a few to be polite. After all, whether it was good or bad, it was a meal. After eating, without me having to say anything, Minako automatically cleared the bowls and plates and went to the sink to wash them. Watching Minako busy, I suddenly thought of Xiao Man again. Every time Xiao Man finished eating, she would just leave everything and never clean up. Sometimes the sink would be piled high with bowls and chopsticks. Both were women who didn't work and stayed at home, yet Xiao Man was so ungrateful for her blessings. Thinking of Xiao Man, I thought of what Li Fei had said. Had she already gotten together with that colleague surnamed Chun? I gave a bitter smile at the thought. She really didn't waste any time, moving on seamlessly. After Minako finished washing the dishes, she immediately came to me and knelt on the floor. She looked into my eyes and asked, "Do you need a new nap?" Her gaze made me a little creeped out. What did she mean? Seeing that I didn't say anything, Minako quickly added, "Don't you have to go to work this afternoon? You can take a nap." My eyebrows twitched, and I looked at her in surprise. Was there something else on the agenda? Seeing that I still wasn't speaking, Minako said again, "If you want to take a nap, I can give you a massage." I looked at Minako, stunned, and thought to myself, a real massage or something else. Seeing that I was still silent, Minako thought I was unwilling. She then went to the side and dragged her suitcase over. She then knelt before me and asked, "May I put my clothes in the wardrobe?" I nodded. "Of course, you'll be living here for a month after all." Minako immediately nodded in thanks, then began to open her suitcase and organize her clothes right in front of me. Seeing her suitcase full of strange and exotic clothes, my mind was filled with wild fantasies. Her words about a massage were still echoing in my ears. What did she really mean? Before heading to work in the afternoon, I decided to be cautious and deliberately placed a 10,000 yen bill in the bedside drawer. I thought to myself, I'll just leave this money here. As soon as it's gone, I'll kick Minako out. When it was time to go, I let Minako know and gave her a spare key. Minako accepted the key with delight, saw me all the way to the door, and even knelt there to get my shoes for me. I had never received this kind of treatment before. To be honest, I wasn't quite used to it. As I was leaving, Minako immediately bowed and said, "Otsukaresama da." I didn't understand and couldn't be bothered to pull out my phone to translate. I figured it was some kind of polite farewell. Just after I stepped out, I hesitated for a moment, then turned back and took out another 10,000 yen for Minako. Minako looked at me in surprise, not understanding what I meant. I told her, "You can use this money to buy anything you need." But Minako said that she now had a place to live and food to eat, and there was nothing she needed. I frowned and pushed the money into her hand anyway. "Then see if you can buy something for me." After giving her the money, I didn't wait for her to say anything else and turned to leave for work. But I was thinking to myself, 20,000 yen is only about 1,000 yuan back home. If I had really misjudged her character, I would just consider it the price of a lesson learned. When I got to work, Lin Hui was already there. He asked me what I had for lunch. I said I had dumplings, but I didn't dare tell him that Minako had made them for me. Lin Hui said that Japanese dumplings were better pan-fried, and that they ate them as a side dish with rice or noodles. He said that when his family made authentic dumplings, he would bring some for me when he had the chance. I smiled and said okay. After all, in a foreign country, having a warm-hearted fellow countryman made my heart feel warm. The afternoon's work was much like the morning's. Since I was new, there were still many things I needed to familiarize myself with. Lin Hui told me that if I could, I should take some time to learn Japanese. If I didn't want to build my career back home in the future, I could apply for a long-term overseas assignment. Actually, the salary here was quite a bit higher than back home, plus there were overseas allowances and so on. This time, I really took Lin Hui's words to heart. To be honest, there wasn't much for me to miss back home at this point. If I could earn more, that would of course be better. But when I thought of my parents back home, I became conflicted again. This wasn't something that could be decided in a moment. I had to think it through carefully. But learning Japanese was a good idea. After all, many of my colleagues here were Japanese. Using translation software was convenient, but it was still more troublesome than speaking directly. After finally getting some work done, I suddenly thought of Minako during my break. I wondered, had she taken the money and left, or was she waiting for me at home? When work ended, Lin Hui wanted to ask me out for a drink. I made an excuse, saying I'd just arrived, was a bit tired, and wanted to rest early, and managed to put him off. When I got back home and saw the main door tightly shut, my heart sank a little. But as I walked a few steps closer, I saw Minako busy in the kitchen through the front window. I immediately breathed a sigh of relief. It seemed my suspicions had been unfounded. After I entered, I found Minako already kneeling by the door, holding my slippers for me. She must have heard me opening the door and come over to prepare in advance, right? Seeing this, a rush of heat went to my head, and I had a strange illusion. At this moment, I felt like a husband returning home from work. And Minako was the wife who stayed at home every day, waiting for her hard-working husband to return. To be honest, who knows how many men back home have fantasized about such a scene. I used to be one of them, and now that this fantasy scene was playing out right before my eyes, I was actually a bit dazed. After changing my shoes, Minako said that dinner would be ready soon and asked me to wait a little. I went back to the inner room and sat there, watching the incredibly busy Minako, and a ripple went through my heart. Suddenly, I remembered something. While Minako wasn't looking, I quickly opened the drawer. The 10,000 yen was still lying there quietly, its position unchanged in the slightest. Seeing this, I breathed a sigh of relief. To be honest, my feelings at this moment were still quite complex. I hoped that Minako wasn't that kind of person, that she wouldn't let me down. But then I thought it would be best if Minako just took the money and left to completely shatter my own illusions. Just as I was thinking this, Minako had already brought a variety of dishes to the table. When I saw the table full of 5 or 6 dishes, none of which were made from ingredients in my own fridge, I couldn't help but be taken aback. Minako seemed to notice my doubt and quickly explained, "I used the money you gave me to buy groceries. There's still more in the fridge, but I didn't buy too many vegetables. They need to be bought fresh every day." Hearing Minako's explanation, I felt a wave of relief wash over me. The money in the drawer was untouched. Maybe she hadn't found it yet. The money I had given her, while not a lot, was equivalent to nearly 500. Minako hadn't run off with the money, nor had she spent it recklessly. It had all been used to buy groceries. Looking at the Japanese-style meal on the table, the meat and vegetable dishes complemented each other perfectly. There was fried pork cutlet, potato croquettes, stir-fried vegetables, and udon noodles. Seeing me just looking at the food on the table without picking up my chopsticks, Minako immediately said, "I'm sorry if it isn't very good. Please tell me what you think." I quickly picked up a piece to taste it. To be honest, it wasn't particularly good, but it wasn't bad either. Perhaps, for me, this kind of food was just very ordinary. Nevertheless, I acted as if it was delicious and praised her. "It's very good." Minako had been watching me nervously, waiting for my verdict. As soon as she heard me say that, she breathed a sigh of relief and a smile appeared on her face. I quickly urged her to eat as well, telling her not to just watch me, that we didn't need to be so formal here. Only then did Minako pick up her chopsticks and begin to eat with me. The side dishes were average, but the udon was quite good, so I finished it all. Minako was only halfway through her meal when she saw I was done and immediately asked, "Do you need a rest now? Shall I run a bath for you?" I quickly said, "No, don't worry about it. You finish eating. I still need to organize some files, so don't mind me." Minako nodded and said nothing more, concentrating on her own meal. I went to one side and took out some unfinished work documents for my company to look over. After Minako finished eating, she immediately began to clean up. I heard the noise and glanced up. Seemingly already accustomed to her doing these things, I didn't say anything. After washing the dishes and cleaning the table, Minako immediately brought out a kettle and made me a cup of tea. I smiled, nodded my thanks, and continued to look at my documents. Minako, however, knelt to one side, doing nothing, just quietly waiting. I didn't notice at first. It was only when I put my files down that I saw her and was taken aback. I told her, "You don't have to wait on me like this. You can do whatever you need to do." Only then did Minako reply, with a hi, but she still asked if I was finished with my work. Once I was, she would go and run the bathwater. Feeling somewhat helpless, I said, "All right then, go run it." Inwardly, however, I wondered, are all Japanese women like this? After Minako had run the bath, I went to wash. In Japanese bathrooms, in addition to a shower, there is always a bath or tub. Everyone there, regardless of age or gender, loves to soak in a bath. My bathroom was too small, There was only a wooden tub. I actually always take showers, so this was a rare indulgence. As I was bathing, I heard Minako's voice from outside the door, chattering away incomprehensibly. My phone was outside. I hadn't brought it in, so I had no idea what she wanted. But my mind began to run wild with fantasies. No way could it be? I thought to myself. But right up until I finished washing, none of my imagined scenarios came to pass. When I opened the bathroom door, however, I found a neatly folded set of pajamas waiting outside. It was only then that I realized Minako must have been bringing me the pajamas earlier. I took the pajamas into the bathroom, changed out of my clothes, and put them on. When I came out again, Minako was kneeling on the floor. She asked me something. I quickly grabbed my phone to translate, only to find out she was asking if I needed a massage. I wondered, had she trained as a masseuse? Was she itching to practice? She wanted to give me a massage this afternoon, and now again tonight. Since you're so eager, I'll give you a chance to shine, I thought to myself. With that, I nodded and lay down on the tatami mat. Minako immediately moved closer and started massaging my legs. Honestly, her technique was mediocre. She didn't know how much pressure to use. She was a complete novice. Still, having her massage me was a good way to relieve some fatigue. When her hands started moving up from my calf to my thighs, I stopped her immediately. That area is rather sensitive. I didn't want things to get complicated. I had taken her in, and my mind was constantly filled with fantasies about her. But thinking and doing are two different things. After all, I didn't really know her, and I was afraid of stirring up more trouble. Minako didn't say anything more, just continued to massage my arms and shoulders for a little while. I figured it was about enough, and quickly said, "That's fine, you can stop now." Only then did Minako take a step back, kneel down, and ask, "So, I'm going to take a shower now?" I was taken aback. "If you want to take a shower, just take a shower. Why ask me?" I nodded and waved my hand, gesturing for her to hurry up and go. I guess I was starting to understand. This was the common routine for Japanese women. Perhaps they were just used to it, and it wasn't really about all the complicated things we might imagine. But the more they acted this way, the more it truly made one's mind wander. It's just that we aren't Japanese men and aren't used to it yet. While Minako was in the shower, I glanced at the area beside the tatami mat. I thought about how last night she had slept with just a blanket as a mattress and her own overcoat for cover. It was late autumn now. Sleeping like this, she would catch a cold sooner or later. If I was really going to let Minako stay for a month, it seemed I would have to buy a set of bedding tomorrow. With that in mind, I took out my phone and browsed casually. After a while, Minako still hadn't come out. I wondered if something had happened. I waited a while longer before Minako finally emerged, having changed into a pair of chibi Maruko-chan pajamas. She was holding a basin of freshly washed clothes, including the ones I had just taken off, and proceeded to hang them by the window to dry. Her own clothes that she had changed out were also hung there. After hanging the clothes, Minako came over, took her blanket, and prepared her pallet on the floor. Seeing this, I told her my idea. I would give her money tomorrow to buy herself a set of bedding. But Minako quickly refused, saying she was perfectly content and that I didn't need to waste money on her. I told her, "Since you're staying here, you should stay properly. The weather is getting colder, and you'll get sick if you keep this up." Only then did Minako nod. She bowed to thank me, then laid down to one side, covering herself with my overcoat. After saying good night to me, she picked up her phone and started looking at it. I glanced over at her, but didn't say anything. I planned to browse my phone for a bit before sleeping as well. In the middle of the night, I woke up needing to use the toilet. With the bedside lamp on, I saw Minako curled up on the floor, her body trembling slightly. I thought about how even I felt a bit cold getting out from under the covers. She must be even colder, but I didn't dwell on it and went to the bathroom first. After coming out and getting back into bed, I found I couldn't fall back asleep. The thought of me being warm in bed while Minako was shivering with cold didn't sit well with me. I sat up and gently patted Minako. Minako slowly opened her eyes, looked at me, and quickly sat up as well. I took out my phone and used a translator to tell her, "Why don't you sleep on the bed? I'll sleep on the floor. I'm a man. I can handle the cold." Minako waved her hands repeatedly. "No, it's okay. I'm not cold." How could I believe that? I quickly said, "If you want me to keep letting you stay here, you'll listen to me. Otherwise, you can leave tomorrow." Minako looked at me, stunned. She hesitated for a long while, not daring to agree. I didn't wait for her to agree. I just moved directly onto the floor pallet and told her to get on the bed. Reluctantly, Minako got into the bed but didn't lie down, instead just looking at me. I paid her no mind and simply turned off the bedside lamp to sleep. To be honest, the floor wasn't just cold, it was also uncomfortably hard. Although the tatami mat wasn't much more comfortable than a bed back home, at least it wasn't as hard as the wooden floor. Plus, even though the overcoat was large, it couldn't cover both my head and my feet. No wonder Minako was shivering from the cold. I was also angry at myself for being so careless. Since I had decided to let Minako stay, how could I not have thought of buying bedding? But even so, I felt I should be able to withstand the cold better than Minako. Besides, it wasn't winter yet. Enduring it for one night shouldn't be a big problem. Just as drowsiness was setting in and I was drifting off, I suddenly felt my body gradually getting warmer. I didn't think much of it and slept straight through until morning. When I woke up, I discovered that I was covered with the bedding from the bed. Turning over, I found Minako sleeping right beside me. I looked at her delicate face, and I could smell the faint, pleasant scent from her body. My heart skipped a beat. How did she end up sleeping next to me? But then I immediately understood. Last night, Minako must have been afraid I would be cold and brought the bedding down to sleep here herself. No wonder I suddenly stopped feeling cold in the middle of the night. The thought of Minako's kindness brought a warmth to my heart. Just then, however, Minako suddenly turned in her sleep. Feeling awkward, I immediately closed my eyes. Minako then sat up, glanced at me, and got out from under the covers. I then peeked through my barely open eyes and watched her go to the bathroom. The warmth of the bedding still held her scent, and my heart stirred. Besides Xiao Man, she was the first woman to have ever slept under the same covers with me. When Minako came out of the bathroom, she started to get busy with breakfast. Only then did I open my eyes, pretending to have just woken up. Minako, however, didn't mention a word about last night, as if it had never happened. After breakfast together, Minako, just like yesterday, walked me to the door. I remembered something and left her money to buy bedding. When I returned at noon, Minako was kneeling at the door again, having prepared a full table of dishes waiting for me. But when I asked her if she had bought the bedding, she said not yet. I told her not to forget in the afternoon, otherwise she would be cold again at night. Minako didn't say anything, just focused on eating. When I came back in the evening, Minako still hadn't bought the bedding. I couldn't help but be stunned for a moment and asked her why not. Only then did Minako say, "You'll be leaving soon. There's no need to waste money. Anyway, you can't take it with you when you leave." I thought to myself that the logic was sound, but what about tonight? Minako's face turned slightly red and she said, "Last night was fine." Hearing this, my heart stirred, not understanding what Minako meant. Was she hinting at something? Before going to bed, while I was washing up, Minako had already laid out the bedding. After I finished washing up, she had me lie down and gave me a massage. Her technique today was much better than yesterday. I don't know if she secretly learned something. But thinking about sleeping at night, my whole body felt a little hot. I am no Lu Xiaohui, nor am I any kind of gentleman. Last night, being in the same bed, I only found out about it afterwards. Now that I knew in advance, I couldn't guarantee what I would do. I told Minako all of this exactly as it was. But Minako looked into my eyes and said, "I don't think you are that kind of person." With that one sentence, she extinguished all the wicked fire in my heart. She already trusts you so much. If you still have any wicked thoughts, wouldn't that make you no different from a beast? When it was time to sleep, although Minako and I were in the same bed, there was still a little distance between us, and she also slept with her back to me. I couldn't fall asleep, tossing and turning, thinking that acting on my desires would indeed make me a beast. But sleeping in the same bed and having nothing happen, wouldn't that make me worse than a beast? So I got up and went to the bathroom, washed my face with cold water to extinguish my desire. When I got back into bed, Minako asked me, "Is it very uncomfortable for you like this? Should I go sleep on the floor?" I quickly said no, and then added, "I happen to be learning Japanese. Can you teach me?" I thought that enduring like this was not a solution. It would be better to find something to distract myself. Minako immediately nodded and said okay, turning over to look at me. I began to ask sentence by sentence, and Minako taught me sentence by sentence, also correcting my pronunciation. But how could I be genuinely trying to learn? I would remember it 1 second and forget it the next. Fortunately, I soon got sleepy, and the night passed just like that. The next few days were all the same. When I woke up in the morning, Minako had already made breakfast. When I came back at noon, and in the evening, I was also greeted with hot meals. Someone would draw my bath, and after the bath, someone would give me a massage. I thought that even the life of a god would probably be no better than this. No wonder many Chinese men like Japanese girls. Who wouldn't like a Japanese girl like this? But the hardest part to endure was always at night. There were several times I almost couldn't hold on. Sometimes I would even wake up to find Minako holding me in her sleep. If I could still resist in a situation like this, I really wouldn't be a man. I felt that if this continued, something was bound to happen. So I had to talk with Minako. But Minako still said the same thing. I believe you are not that kind of person. This just left me speechless. I really want to tell her, you think too highly of me. I'm a normal man after all. But I still didn't quite dare. Although I hadn't completely followed Lin Huey's advice, I still remembered him telling me that unless the other person was willing, it would be illegal. What could I do? I could only endure it, lest I get caught up in a lawsuit before returning to the country. Soon, I had a day off, so I had Minako take me out to have some fun. It had been half a month since I came to Tokyo, and besides going to and from work every day, I hadn't really gone out and had fun. Minako took me to see the great Buddha of Kamakura and Mount Fuji, and also took me on the sea viewing train. It was also the first time I held hands with Minako, just like a boyfriend and girlfriend, playing without any inhibitions. And Minako put me first in everything. At that moment, I really felt like I was her god. This feeling was very special. It was something I had never experienced with Xiaoman. Minako told me that one day was too short, otherwise there were many more places we could have gone to play. She even asked when I would be coming back, offering to be my guide and show me all over Japan. Her question caught me off guard, and it was only then that I realized I would be returning to my country soon too. My cheerful mood instantly plummeted. Back home that evening, Minako could see I was feeling down. At bedtime, she hugged me from behind and said, "Let's just sleep like this tonight." For the first time, I didn't let my mind wander. The thought of leaving soon had killed my mood for anything else. In the following days, I reverted to being a working machine. 9 to 5, day in and day out. But all the exhaustion of the day would melt away the moment I saw Minako. Maybe because Minako and I had grown much closer, she started talking more. At times, I get the dazed feeling that we were like a boyfriend and girlfriend living together. She often asked me about things back in my country, and every time I told her, she would exclaim in amazement, "If you ever get the chance, you have to come visit," I told her. "Don't believe the rumors you see online." Minako nodded earnestly and promised she would definitely go if she ever had the chance. In the days that followed, there was no difference between Minako and me and a couple sharing a life together. Moreover, I felt more and more that I might have fallen for this runaway girl. I was reluctant to leave home for work each morning and couldn't wait to rush back after my shift ended. Only when I was incredibly busy at work could I temporarily forget about her. But the moment things quieted down, my thoughts would uncontrollably drift back to her. And I had a nagging feeling that Minako felt the same way about me. After all, we were sleeping in the same bed. I figured that without at least some mutual affection, even the most open-minded girl wouldn't be willing to do that. Even though we'd never actually done anything. But neither Minako nor I had broken that final barrier. I was afraid that once I left, I'd never get the chance to return. I didn't know what she was thinking, but I sensed she must be feeling conflicted as well. That night at bedtime, Minako held me, just as she always did. But I couldn't sleep no matter what. Noticing this, Minako suddenly kissed me on the cheek. I thought it was a natural progression, that it was time for, I immediately went with the flow, holding her and kissing her for a long while. But when I tried to take things further, she stopped me. "It's not time yet." What the hell? I was already in the mood, and she was telling me it wasn't the time? I asked her when the time would be right, and she just said I would know when it came. Frustrated, I couldn't sleep well the rest of the night, getting up several times to splash my face with cold water. The month was over in a flash, and it was time for me to go home. Both Minako and I had been counting down the days. We knew this moment would arrive eventually. To be honest, after living with Minako for a month, I had grown attached. Once I left, who knew if I'd ever have the chance to come back? And even if I did, there was no telling when. When Lin Hui heard I was going back, he insisted on throwing a farewell party for me with our colleagues. I couldn't get out of it no matter how I tried, and they dragged me out to eat. I sent Minako a text to let her know what was happening. Minako just replied, telling me to enjoy myself. I didn't expect to be pulled into a karaoke session right after we finished eating. The whole time, my mind was elsewhere. All I could think about was Minako. Time was running out. Every minute wasted here was one less minute with Minako. But the thought of having to part with Minako tomorrow made me feel terrible. On top of that, with Lin Hui and the others constantly pushing drinks on me, I had a few too many. It wasn't until after 10 o'clock that Lin Hui finally put me in a cab to go home. I swayed unsteadily to the door, key in hand, fumbling to fit it into the keyhole. But just then, the door opened, and I saw Minako, dressed in traditional Japanese clothing, kneeling at the entrance. The sight left me spellbound. I stared for a long moment, thinking she was as beautiful as a cherry blossom tonight. After I stepped inside, Minako brought over a pair of slippers for me. I looked at her and asked, "Why are you still up?" Minako replied that she couldn't rest, worried, until I came home. Seeing me swaying as I walked, she quickly stood up and helped me toward the inner room. Once we reached the tatami mat and sat down, Minako took my hand. "Regardless of anything else," she said, "thank you for letting me stay with you this month. I'll remember this month forever. Tonight, the time has come." As she said this, a deep blush instantly rose to Minako's cheeks, and she lowered her gaze. I understood her meaning in an instant. I immediately pulled her into my arms and laid her down. When I opened my eyes the next morning, Minako was already up and had prepared breakfast. Today, she was wearing the same schoolgirl uniform she had on when I first met her. Seeing that I was awake, she quickly came over to get my clothes for me. I took the opportunity to hold her and kiss her for a while longer. Just then, out of the corner of my eye, I saw her already packed suitcase. I finally let her go, staring blankly at the suitcase, lost in thought. After I leave, is she going to start her wandering life again, waiting for the next god to appear? Seeing the dazed look in my eyes, Minako seemed to understand something. She kissed me on the cheek and then said, "I'm planning to go back and find my father." Hearing this, I was stunned for a moment. "Find your father?" Minako nodded. "Yes, I heard from a relative that my father is in Hokkaido. I'm going to Hokkaido to find him." I couldn't help but nod. To be honest, I really didn't want her to continue being a god-waiting girl. Firstly, I felt it wasn't a long-term solution. She needed to settle down eventually. Secondly, it was for my own selfish reasons. I didn't like the idea of her going to another god's home. Although I knew I might leave and never return, I still didn't want her to go on like this. After I washed up, Minako and I had our last breakfast together after a month. I usually ate very quickly, but this time I ate very slowly. Minako finished, but I was still eating. It wasn't just that I had no appetite. I also wanted to take the opportunity to spend a little more time with Minako. But no matter how slowly one eats, the meal must eventually come to an end. When I finished, Minako immediately got up to clear the dishes and wash them in the sink. Watching her back, my heart was filled with reluctance. I couldn't help but go up and hug her tightly from behind. Minako's body trembled at first, but she quickly continued washing the dishes without pausing. After she finished, she turned around and hugged me tightly as well. We just held each other like that, neither of us speaking, only feeling each other's breath by our ears. We could also feel each other's heartbeat. After a long while, the alarm on my phone rang. I knew it was time for me to truly part with Minako. I held Minako and gave her one last passionate kiss. Minako responded enthusiastically until we were both breathless and finally pulled apart. I immediately took out all the Japanese yen I had on me. Except for the taxi fare, I stuffed the rest into Minako's hand. Minako tried to refuse, but I stopped her. "You keep it. You'll need money for the trip to Hokkaido." Minako nodded slightly, folded the money neatly, put it in her pocket, and then looked at me affectionately. I sighed softly, picked up my luggage, and walked out the door. Minako also followed behind me with her suitcase. The car that Lin Hui had called for me arrived quickly. I looked back at Minako, a wave of sadness washing over me. The taxi driver honked the horn, urging me on, I had no choice but to get in the car. The moment I sat in the car, I looked at Minako and saw that she was crying. She covered her mouth with one hand and waved at me with the other. Though tears streamed down her face, she tried her best to smile. The car drove further and further away, and Minako's face became more and more blurred, until the car turned a corner and Minako completely disappeared from my sight. My nose tingled, and I fought back the tears. On the way, my mind was filled with every little moment I had spent with Minako. Like scenes from a movie, they played out in my mind one by one. I don't know how I got to the airport, how I passed through security, or how I boarded the plane. I felt like a soulless zombie, until my phone buzzed. I opened it and saw a text message from Minako. It was all in Japanese. I used a translation app to understand it. Thank you for your care over the past month. I will pray for you at the Hakji Temple in Hokkaido. I hope that after you return to your country, everything goes well and you have a bright future. Mitsui Minako. Seeing this, I finally broke down and the tears flowed uncontrollably. After returning to my country, I studied Japanese diligently and was exceptionally proactive at work. In my free time, I would text Minako to tell her about my situation. Minako also told me that although she hadn't found her father yet, she had found a job at a hot spring. She planned to work while looking for her father. I applied to the team leader several times to go to Japan again, but it was never approved. Half a year passed like this, with me constantly applying and constantly being rejected. One day, Li Fei called and told me that he had seen Xiao Man again. He chatted with her for a bit and learned that the man surnamed Chun had scammed Xiao Man out of her money and run off with another woman. I just smiled faintly, non-committal. It had nothing to do with me anymore. If Li Fei hadn't called and mentioned Xiao Man, I would have almost forgotten about her. Seeing my reaction, Li Fei knew that I had completely let go and didn't say anything more. My heart is filled with Minako now. How can I not let go? As for Xiao Man, she can do whatever she wants. Today, 1 year later, the group leader gave me a call. The end.